Hello, and thank you for joining us here at CBR. Thor Odinson's hammer, Mjolnir, is one of Marvel Comics' most iconic weapons, and the mighty hammer has made quite an impression on the MCU too. Mjolnir and Thor are synonymous, but there have been a few instances in which the moody hammer has allowed others to use it. Let's take a closer look.
Well, if there's too much weight, you lose power on the swings.
Mjolnir is a large sledgehammer that would require great strength for anyone to wield. However, given the weapon's magical properties, only the hammer itself can decide who can lift it.
Come on, Cap.
Perhaps most notably, Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, has been able to lift Mjolnir on some occasions. The most iconic instance occurred during 2019's Avengers Endgame, during the titular team's final showdown against Thanos. Mjolnir, witnessing Captain America's great heroism and noble spirit, decided to allow itself to be lifted, creating one of the MCU's most iconic moments so far. While the scene was the first time anyone besides Thor used Mjolnir, Captain America has done so on numerous occasions in the comics. One notable instance is in Thor Volume 1, number 390, to which Thor gives his approval when he tells Steve Rogers, "When you first spoke to me about your problems, I had doubts about you. They were quickly erased when you lifted Mjolnir, for only a man or god worthy, pure of heart and noble of mind, could have done so." Although he did not technically lift Mjolnir, it's worth mentioning that Magneto has stopped the sentient weapon dead in its tracks. In Journey into Mystery number 109, Thor and Magneto come into conflict for the first time in Marvel Comics history. In the sequence, Thor throws Mjolnir, which arcs of its own volition and heads straight toward Magneto. But the supervillain has a trick up his sleeve. Using his magnetic repeller field, Magneto creates a barrier, stopping Mjolnir from making contact with him. Although the scene ends before we can see if Magneto will attempt to lift the hammer with his own strength, without the aid of magnetic powers, the open-endedness leaves the door open for future possibilities. With the X-Men confirmed for the MCU, the possibility of Magneto lifting the hammer could be revisited in future Marvel works.
Okay.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of Loki has undergone a lot of changes since he first appeared in 2011's Thor. After his adventures with the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, and several acts that could be deemed heroic, there's no character, save for Bucky Barnes, who has had quite the redemption that Loki has in the MCU. The movie and TV version of Loki has never lifted Mjolnir, but perhaps the hammer would have its own opinions about the character's growth. In the comics, however, Loki has lifted Mjolnir before. Through trickery and magical aid, Loki has been able to lift the magical hammer. He's even disguised himself as Thor for the very task. Whatever Mjolnir is in spirit, it too can be tricked like the rest of us. In the MCU, Loki could trick the Mjolnir, or he could lift the weapon on his own, bringing his character redemption arc even further.
Good, let's go.
Among the other Asgardians who have at times been deemed worthy, there's Sif. Sif made her first comic book appearance in Journey into Mystery number 102. In the MCU, Sif has appeared multiple times. However, she has always had a supporting role, and she has not yet had the opportunity to truly shine. In the comics, however, she is a formidable warrior and has been romantically involved with Thor at certain points. If any character should return to the MCU for more than a glorified cameo, then it is Sif, and she should possibly be allowed to lift Mjolnir too. Eric Masterson was a mere mortal when he first met Thor. The young architect had more than a string of bad luck when he was attacked by various supervillains, though he was always saved by Thor. However, Masterson's luck would run out when the villain known as Mongoose gravely injured Masterson. To save Masterson's life, Thor's essence is placed within Masterson and the two become a singular entity. This goes on for a time, allowing Masterson to, sort of, take on the role of Thor and wield Mjolnir. It's only later that Masterson fully assumes the role of Thor, temporarily, transforming with the power and blessing of Mjolnir into a version of Thor himself. It's all very confusing, but eventually Masterson becomes Thunderstrike, and that comic didn't last too long. Wielders of Mjolnir are not solely limited to Marvel. In one instance, DC's Wonder Woman takes a crack at the temperamental hammer. Wonder Woman summarily destroys Mjolnir, a feat that's rare even for Marvel's strongest characters, and mocks Thor. "I've crushed your stupid hammer." What's important to remember is that this version of Thor is plucked from Norse mythology, and in no way related to Marvel's Thor. Thanks, copyright law. Even further, DC's Thor let slip that the weapon Diana of Themyscira destroyed wasn't actually the real Mjolnir. The incident is more of a minor jab, all in good fun, but if anyone from DC were to be deemed worthy, then it would be Wonder Woman. He might look like a mix between an ant and a horse, but Beta Ray Bill is a very cool character. First appearing in the Mighty Thor number 337, Beta Ray Bill is a Bronze Age hero who might look like a freakish creature from outer space, but he's probably the most worthy character besides Thor to wield Mjolnir. Beta Ray Bill first appears in suspended animation aboard an alien ship. Revived, Thor and Bill engage in combat, though if they took a moment to chat, they'd realize they weren't meant to be enemies. Once Bill disarms Thor, Mjolnir turns into a craftily camouflaged cane, but Bill activates it, receiving Thor's powers and the ability to use the cane, hammer, itself. Although Thor and Beta Ray Bill spend a long time fighting, they eventually become the greatest of allies. Even though Beta Ray Bill has yet to formally appear in the MCU, despite possible Easter eggs, the underrated series Earth's Mightiest Heroes features the character. He even gets to lift Mjolnir. Carol Danvers, better known as Captain Marvel, is so incredibly powerful most of the time that she has little need for the assistance of weapons. However, Mjolnir is no rudimentary piece of equipment. The magical hammer enhances abilities that are already there, packing an additional punch. And, to add a little touch, the weapon typically allows other characters to lift it when it will have the most impact for the team's morale. Case in point, during Avengers No Road Home, Captain Marvel manages to lift Mjolnir during the team's battle against Nyx. The moment is as cinematic as anything in the MCU, and inspires the team to make the final push against Nyx, an age-old evil with the power to destroy every living being. What Mjolnir deems worthy is subject to the decision-making of the hammer itself. While there are plenty of heroes who have or should have had the opportunity to lift the magical weapon, there sometimes seems to be no rhyme or reason than just because. At other times, it seems like Mjolnir is deciding to grant the power of its use because someone makes a bold stand, mustering courage to face a powerful foe. Whatever the reasons, perhaps the strangest figure to lift Mjolnir is the mighty Thor. No, not that one. We're talking about Frog Thor, aka Throg. In the comics, Thor has been turned into a frog, and Throg has also existed separately from the mainline version of the God of Thunder. In both cases, Mjolnir has chosen to allow Throg to lift it, proving that no matter the size or even species, greatness can exist.
Thor is an Asgardian frog!
One of the coolest instances in which a character other than Thor has lifted Mjolnir comes in Avengers number 36. Moon Knight, playing the antagonist role, has taken Mjolnir for his own designs. Well, really, at the behest of Khonshu. Thanks to its moon metal properties, Moon Knight is able to use Mjolnir, though it technically doesn't really want to be used for such purposes. During a showdown against T'Challa himself, the Black Panther, Moon Knight hurls Mjolnir at the Wakandan hero. But instead of hitting Black Panther, Mjolnir zooms by and flies into T'Challa's hands. Black Panther reveals that Mjolnir and the Black Panther lineage have a long history together.